Welcome, welcome. Greg Essenmacher here once again, the Two Sleuth Podcast. Today's episode, I'm welcoming in my friend Cory Roletto, which he said that I could do it with an Italian accent. Not going to do it.
Oh,
Not going to start the
Roletto.
episode. A little roletto with some pasta and agnolotti. So thanks, Cory, for being here. Cory founded WEO Media in 2009. He's helped over 1,000 dental practices implement successful online growth strategies. And it's all about growth these days. Driving force behind innovation of ROI focus. And anybody who listens to this knows I'm all about ROI metrics, especially in the full arch space. We'll definitely be diving into that. His background is a BS, not in BS, a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering and an MBA from none other than the University of Washington. And I know this is going to come out after the first of the year, and we're going to talk about this. Maybe I'll ask him for some predictions because post-production after the playoffs happen, where my Wolverines, his Huskies are in different brackets. Maybe they'll play in the final. Maybe I'll ask him for a prediction. Maybe it'll be right or wrong. Anyway, he played Division I baseball there, which is exciting. I want to know what position he played. Outside of work, he has a wife, 3 boys. I want to know the ages of your boys. And he's the vice president of the Northwest Kidney Kids and remains an avid baseball fan, continues to play ball to this day. Welcome, Cory. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks for being here, man.
Well, thanks for having me, Greg. That's quite the introduction. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're an avid baseball fan, I got to tell you, this year was the first time for me ever because the Diamondbacks, I live here in Phoenix, were in the World Series. And I thought, you know what? I haven't been to a World Series game. I'm going to do it. And I went to a World Series game this year. It was pretty electric. I mean, they got their butts kicked, so that wasn't that great. But I mean, just the atmosphere and the pageantry, it was fun to actually go. Have you been to a World Series game?
I have not. I think that's on the bucket list. Kind of waiting for my Mariners to get there. I might be waiting for a while.
So I have a story about the Mariners. I remember back in, oh gosh, this might have been, I want to say 09. I remember the single game playoff with the Mariners and someone. Was it in 09? And Randy Johnson? No? I
Oh
could be
man,
mixing up
that's
years.
really going back a ways. Yeah,
It is.
They had they had the single game to see who went to the playoffs.
Yeah, when they had the divisional round, when they were tied to see who. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I'm going back in the memory bank. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. So, marketing. Anybody hears marketing, what's the first thing they think? Ugh, they have war stories and I'm sure success stories. I know my clients have for sure. I want to jump out of the gate and I just want to ask you a very blunt question because I get asked all the time by clients I work with, by others in the industry, whether I'm speaking, which I do at a lot of, education institutes, by those that are starting full arch. So what makes WEO Media different in marketing? What's the approach that differentiates you from the umpteen others that are out there doing marketing? Let's rip the Band-Aid off, my friend.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. One is we approach from a more holistic avenue where we're really working with the office to identify what they are trying to accomplish, right? A lot of it comes back to, like you said, new patients or focusing on marketing for particular services, but really putting together a plan based off of what the needs are, how do they compete versus their competition, and then really working with them over time to implement that program. I think there's, one of the biggest things that I think drives our success is that we align our internal company goals and incentives for our employees with the success of our clients. So, for example, our search engine optimization team, one of their goals is to have a client on page 1 for the most competitive term within 6 months. If they do so, they get bonus for that, right? So I think it's a twofold thing. It's like our belief is that if we are successful for our clients, we ourselves will be successful, right? And going in with that attitude and being open, upfront, honest, telling what we're doing, telling what we're not doing, lifting up the skirt per se to, show everything is the only way we really want to do business. And I think our clients really appreciate that.
Well, and that's got to be a little more difficult than those that are all show, no go, right? That, roll out the red carpet, have the big wine and dine, and promise the world, which sometimes, most of the time when they do that, unrealistic and set unrealistic expectations. So I love that you talked about that. One of the things that you said, though, right there in the beginning, aligning your employee goals with the client goals. Any practice that I work with, especially in full arch, that's my lane, all the time we talk about this, right? You can certainly have like a base of pay, especially for those that have any touch point in the patient journey. But I am all about some type of variable that's tied to outcome when it comes to that piece. I think it's so critically important, and not a static goal of pay X amount of dollars for period, right? Or this or that. It's the variable goal, especially if you have some type of range for like treatment coordinators, treatment consultants, whatever you want to call them. If you give them high-low range of where they can go with how they're presenting the treatment plans for patients, then they're actually with the patients, working with them, guiding them to their yes of their brand new smile. And so the alignment of goals, I love hearing that because it's different. It sounds different. And it's not just about, can we create, some great marketing materials, and are we a lead generation company? It's more of alignment of goals. Am I hearing you right in that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and we review, like we have our own internal key performance indicators, KPIs, and we review those on a quarterly basis. And in fact, we're going through some, adjustments for the new year because we've been hitting our goals and some of them really consistently. So they're not a stretch for the team anymore. We've improved our processes and we got to set new goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, speaking of, hitting goals, adjusting, aligning with what's happening out there internally, meaning out there with clients and especially in full arch, because I know you work in that realm quite a bit. You work in others, but let's stick to the lane that I know well, and I know that you and your group does work in well. So let's talk about that. I want what do you think? What are you seeing? What are you hearing from your clients and out there? What are some of those essential strategies for attracting new patients in that lane? What would those be that you're seeing, especially as things have changed so much just in the calendar year of 23, but even in the last 3 months, 6 months, 3 months, right? Just in the last little bit, because the patient population, the way that patients are coming in, questions they're asking, all of that has really started to shift significantly in the last year. What have you seen out there?
Yeah, I think, over time, patients or potential patients just become more educated. So they're asking more intelligent questions as more information they can find online and do research on their own. Oftentimes they've already talked to doctors and maybe they couldn't afford that procedure before. So they're coming in a little bit more prepared. Also, like you said, in the last, year, we've seen interest rates go up and reimbursements from dental insurance is just not covering the increase in costs. So there's some pretty big shifts in the industry where a lot of offices are trying to move to fee for service as fast as they can, which is bucking the trend, pre-pandemic of everybody trying to take more and more insurance. Now it's the opposite. And then you have to make up margin and make profits. You have a lot more GPs expanding into higher end services, dental implants, All-on-4, et cetera, and really wanted to market to that. So the supply of number of offices that, are targeting, full arch and implants is greater. So the supply's up. At the same time, with the increase in interest rates, and most lenders now not lending to subprime. So you got to have a 640 credit score or better to even be considered for a loan. Demand is down because that barrier of entry is so much higher. The cost is higher and you're chopping off the bottom end of the market. So we're noticing that the cost of acquisition for these high-end procedures has crept up, right? So that's the big thing. And so, to achieve the same results, you kind of have to spend more, which sucks because everything costs more these days, right? So I think that's a big trend that I have been noticing over the last couple years. But the other thing too is I think dentists are becoming better educated on how to take advantage of medical insurance. And if you're able to bill out some of these procedures on the medical side, the reimbursements are much greater, right? And you're taking away that barrier of entry where someone is coming in and they're looking at third-party financing, really high interest rate, very expensive procedure like a full arch, and they're not qualifying or it's just too expensive for them. But if you can get them qualified on the medical side and bill a medical insurance, you can pretty much get that covered or a very large portion of it. And so that barrier to entry for that treatment that person really needs is greatly diminished, and it works out better for the patient. The reimbursement's great for the office, and you can see more of those. But I don't see a whole lot of practices at this point that have really figured out how to bill on the medical side, because it's really a difficult thing to set up and implement.
Well, and I think that you're spot on there especially for some of these practices, because there are some medical billing companies out there that are trying to help the practices, but I think there's a learning curve in it, and it really more of a dedicated individual that is specialized in it in order to be successful at it. I have some clients who are experiencing that, have tried it, have worked at it. There's others, I know of a few who have been successful at it, but I agree with you that this is definitely a learning edge where it can be, an area of improvement where they can certainly get more accessibility for more patients on these top end procedures. I want to touch on, though, you'd mentioned it at the beginning of what you were sharing, the fee for service and the insurance based patient, whether it's PPO or whatever the case may be, and the shift in the marketplace, because I think that's significant what you were talking about. And I want to talk a little bit, because not only do I work with full arch clinics, but now more and more those that want to start doing full arch. Say, for example, they're doing, implants, single implants, implant bridges, and they want to expand their portfolio. It's a big piece of what I've been starting to do this calendar year specifically. And so for you and practices that want to do more full arch, or that want to get into full arch that haven't been in the past, that marketing investment, how does that really differ in size? Can you share like the differentiation between that and then new patients in general? Because I talk about it, from the way that Sally, John, Susie, Yesenia would answer the phone, and how that patient engagement piece is different. But maybe from a marketing standpoint and the investment standpoint, if you could share a little bit on that, that could certainly be helpful for the listening audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll work in some kind of cost conversion numbers to give some comparisons for you too. So if we're talking, general patient, new hygiene patient, for example, you can do marketing, you do your SEO, you do some pay-per-click, maybe some social media. Your budgets can be, relatively low in comparison, because you can get some decent traction. And with that type of advertising over time, you can get ranked well, and, have maybe a couple $1,000 to $3,000 PPC budget. And you have this kind of good balance between more immediate benefits of the PPC, and then over time you get the benefits of SEO, which hopefully, if the SEO is doing well, is going to dwarf what you're doing on PPC on a cost per acquisition side. And so, we look at our targets as, 6 months to a year to really get ranking well if the office is properly budgeted for the competition in their area on the SEO side. And eventually we want to get that practice to a cost of acquisition of $100 or better. That's our target on the SEO side. On the PPC side, the cost of acquisition is just more expensive, right? And most of that money that you have funneling in through a marketing company is just going right back out to Google or whoever you're paying for the advertising, the actual placement. So with that, we often will see cost of acquisition start around a few $100s. And then as we're really able to hone in those campaigns through negative key terming and better quality scores and better conversion rates, we can see that acquisition come down pretty significantly. And our target on PPC after a few months for a hygiene patient might be $200 or better, right? So that kind of gives you the cost basis of it. But when you're talking about really high-end procedures and you're going after dental implants, which, by the way, is the second most competitive term in dentistry outside of just dentist in your location, when you're going for dental implants and all-on-4, implant-assisted dentures, those types of higher-end procedures, people are shopping around, right? You think about it, and the cost of a cleaning, okay, it's something, but it's not going to break the bank, right? But all-on-4, you're talking 25, 30, 35,000, depending on where you are in arch. the cost of that is significant, right? And, people look at that and they go, well, I could buy a car for that same amount. And it is really digging into a lot of people's pocketbooks. So they are going to, any lead that's coming in from the internet is a lot different from a lead coming in from a referral source. Referral source is coming in, someone already trusts the recommender, that trust transfers over to you. That's a much easier close. Someone coming in from the internet, I can almost guarantee they're not just talking to you. And so you're going to have them in for that consult. They're going to be kind of, you don't want to be competing on price, but price is always a factor, right? And so what that person's experience is when they first submit that form, when they first make that call or the office reaches back out, to how they're greeted at the front desk, to the conversation they're having in the back room, the treatment coordinator, that is the big differentiator, right? The leads are going to cost what the leads are going to cost, right? Because it's a lot of this is focused on higher end budgets with Google PPC and social media combinations, but the close is greatly dependent upon what you can do in the office, because this is an active competition, right? So oftentimes, and I'm sure you have, and this is a great question back to you, Greg, is, when I'm talking to offices and it's like, what do you need to have in your practice? It's like, well, the goal is to give that person all the information they need to make a decision in the first consultation, right? Before they leave the door, if they're willing and able, maybe they just drop the plastic, right then. But they need to have all the information. What does that mean? Well, in an hour, you have to be able to determine what their medical situation is, provide a treatment plan, provide the cost for that treatment plan, provide the financing if they need financing for that treatment plan. Like, well, how do you do that in an hour? Well, it's a combination of technology in the office, training and availability of the right staff to make all that happen, right? And then, the treatment coordinator is a big key to this, because, they're the ones that are having most of this conversation. So their ability to understand the situation and, hey, maybe a full arch is what we really want to do, but it may not be the best solution for them right now. So how do we introduce them into other things? And it's kind of like it's almost like a downsell from what they came in to do, but at least you can get them more functional and happy with something that they both can afford and the office can provide, right? So being able to have that conversation, kind of go with the flow, answer those difficult questions, plays a great role. And an example of that is, working with an office and, didn't have all these things in place, and their close rate on internet leads was less than 10%, like abysmal, right? And this is internet leads that are coming in for a consult, right? Not just all internet leads, it's consults. They turn around, they get all these pieces in place, 3D cone beam, they did a surgical calculator, so if the doctor was unavailable, they could piece it all together. They had different levels of financing from multiple vendors, and boom, with an hour and a half, they're able to do this. Their close rate increased from less than 10% to around 30 to 40%, which is pretty good for an internet lead, right? So that kind of gives you perspective. And then when they were first starting with this, the cost of acquisition, when 3 years ago, pre-pandemic, we'll go, is that 4 years now? Seems like yesterday.
Time goes by fast, yeah.
But, the cost of acquisition for this type of internet, marketing was, $1,000, $1,100 an arch. Like, it was a lot easier. Now with all the competition, you're over $3,000 an arch, and it just seems to be creeping up, right? So that kind of gives you an idea. Is like, I'll have an office come to me and says, well, I want to do 10 arches a month. And I go, well, how many are you doing now? Well, we're doing 2 or 3. Right. Well, okay. Let's put this in perspective on how much advertising and work this is to calculate out. Well, we could potentially get you to 10 a month or 20 a month, or whatever your goal is, but let's talk what the cost of acquisition is, so you have a realistic view of what your budget needs to be. Right. And that time people swallow a hard pill. Right.
Yeah, and there's so many pieces that go in that, right? It's the geography, it's the competition, it's the maturity of the staff, it's the procedures they have in place, it's the pipeline management. Because, yeah, if they're doing well, that's that 30 percentile of like close day of, but it's also like that pipeline and how big is the pipeline and can they close post consult, right? In the first 7 days, because many of the practices are closing their starts, right? This is their surgical starts. They're closing half or more of their surgical starts within 7 days of the consult, not day of consult, because even if you got the best third-party financing companies in place, then they're also saying, you know what, I've got a really good relationship with my credit union. Let me see if I can get a better rate with them because of the soft pull that you did on third-party financing, all of that. And ultimately, what you're describing as well is that patient experience from the initial inquiry, which whoever's answering the phone, right? That initial inquiry, initial impression, trying to get them not only to book the consult, but to show up. Because if you've made that emotional connection, typically your no-show rate goes down, which means your show rate increases, right? That's the same thing, depending on which way you measure it. But also then that experience from the time that they walk in through your front door, that entire experience all the way through. And I talk and work on this with clients that I work with. And that trust transfer that you're talking about as well, which I think is critically important. And so many of my clients, and we could talk about this literally for hours, but so many of my clients too, they talk about that, well, the algorithms are already always changing with Google because it's a bid, right? You're bidding on that keyword to see whether you can be in the top 2, 3, or 4, just depending on the geography of those paid advertisements on the top. And it's a part of your budget, whether you're spending, 5, 6, 10, 20, 30, 50, 120,000 a month on full arch advertising, because it is competition and you're bidding for those Google AdWords. And like you said, implants are the second most common search term, right? It's not full arch, it's not all on four, it's not name it, right? It's implants. And so it's a game, right? I hate to say it, but it's a game. So tell me a little bit about the targeting for boosting rankings and trying to get up there and understanding the algorithms and what your group does in order to try to maximize those dollars as you're competing for those cost per clicks and just generating the leads, let alone honing in on the leads and trying to reduce on the front end. Because I totally understand that acquisition arch, that cost has just skyrocketed, right? And bringing it down really has a lot to do with those patient experience pieces I talked about and pipeline management. But the sum total is going up because of competition and because of everything else that we've discussed. So can you talk a little bit about those algorithms and your experience with that without giving away your secret sauce? I don't want you to do that.
Yeah. No, that's definitely correct. The algorithms are changing all the time. Our team does a really good job of monitoring what's happening, both on just SEO dev forums and where everything is talked about. We have some subscription services that people just analyze what's happening, like really big companies that are analyze it, what happens, and then kind of publish what they're finding. But we also have a lot of clients, so we have a lot of data too. So we kind of get it from all these different sources, and it's kind of interesting with the Google, how Google has changed over the years. So they used to announce a big algorithm update and tell you exactly what they're trying to do, right? And then they take 6 months to a year to roll it out. But at least you knew what happened. I mean, the last big one that they really detailed was Penguin. Hey, we want all unique content now. If you copied your content from someone else, we're not going to give you credit anymore. We know that other person posted it first, right? So that was like the last big one. They really announced what was going on. They become more and more secretive because they don't want people reverse engineering what they're doing. So they don't really announce updates anymore, but we can see them actually happening because we'll see ranking just fluctuate wildly, right? And we'll see someone's on page 1 and then they drop off of page 1 for almost exactly a week and then they're back. Like, well, what happened there? What was Google testing, right? What other things shifted? What do we know about what other people are saying to find out what's going on? And the way Google does their algorithm changes is they'll make an update and they'll turn the dial up to 100. Like, how much can we affect it if this becomes the most important thing for ranking? And you see all the things shift. And then they go, okay, well, that's obviously too much. Let's dial this back in. And they get it to the level they want and they move on. Right. So like one example is that I'll give you right now that reviews have played a bigger and bigger role over time. And so our most recent research, especially on local search, when you're searching like on Google Maps, the effect of reviews is about 19%, 20% of your ranking factor. So you can do everything right on your website. You can do everything you need to do off your website to point back to your website for traditional organic ranking. But if you aren't consistently getting reviews, you're putting yourself behind an 8-ball, right? Especially if you're in a really competitive area. And then on top of that, you take the age of reviews. So Google was noticing that, hey, if a dentist is in business for 10 years and they've been getting reviews the whole time, they might have 1,000 reviews or more. Well, if you're a new dentist just starting out, how do you ever catch up? You can't, right? It's going to take a really long time and a lot of effort, right? So Google said, well, that's not a really fair playing field because a new doctor might be as good as a doctor that's been around for a while. So we're going to level this playing field and we're going to start discounting reviews that are older than a year. And then it's like, hey, we're not going to count. We don't believe they're counting in reviews that are older than a year now as part of ranking. And they're discounting stuff that's over 6 months old. And really what they're looking at is what did you generate in the last few months? So if you're not actively getting reviews, Google says organically for a doctor's office, you should get 3 to 4 reviews a month. That seems reasonable. But if you can get more, great. You just got to do it consistently. And if you can do that consistently through some software assistance, like a review software that we have or others that are out there, then that just puts you a little bit of step above the competition, right? So that's one example of changes we're seeing where I think people's mentality was, oh, I got to my goal in number of reviews. I will stop asking now.
Right. And I can rest on my laurels. And I think that's important. And the reason why I think that's so important, if you think about it, is you can have a clinician that's really at the top of his game for a long time. And then the quality of their work or the responsiveness of their team or their customer service or their patient experience starts to fall off for whatever reason. I mean, we could list 100 reasons why. And perhaps the experience in the last 6 months to a year goes totally downhill. Well, somebody wouldn't necessarily know that if you look at a ranking and there is, 1,000 reviews and they rank at a 4.8, but in the last 6 months, half of their rankings are a 1-star. And if Google still acknowledges them as equal across the board, maybe they need to retire. I mean, I'm not saying that like if you're an older doctor, maybe you're still at your peak or even better than you were originally. But I like that, what I call weighted average to most recent. And they, also Google wants you to keep going to Google and getting Google reviews. So there's a little self-fulfilling prophecy in there. I like that too. So awesome.
No,
I appreciate that. That's great
themselves.
insight. Well, hey, they don't call it show friends, they call it show business. So, Cory, this is the point of the program. All of my guests play a little something called What the Sleuth is Going On? 3 rapid fire questions. First thing that comes to mind. Are you ready to play?
Let's do it.
All right. Question number 1. What's the worst bad breath you've ever encountered?
The worst bad breath I've ever encountered? Okay. A little bit of story behind this one. So there's an Italian dish called bagna cotta, and it's essentially a oil bath with garlic, anchovies for the salt. You don't actually taste them, and butter. And you actually put meat and vegetables and everything in it, little Savoy cabbage on top of a piece of like French bread, and you pile it up. And it's great for parties. It's like a fondue where everybody puts their own stuff in. But I tell you, the breath the next morning after having bagna cotta is like you're brushing your teeth like 5 times. And the garlic coming out of your pores, if it's like a warm summer day and you're sweating, it is something that people just like, I'm not going to like it. And then they absolutely love it. And then you totally know that you had it the next day.
You had me at garlic. I'm a huge garlic fan. So the next time we get together, Cory, I have expectations now. I'm just saying. I'm putting it out there. Right? All right. Got it. I like it. Question number 2. If you could change one thing about your smile, what would it be?
Oh goodness, I kind of like my smile. I think I've been blessed with good teeth, good genes. So I haven't had braces or anything like that. If you look really close, you might see that one of my teeth is a little bit like crooked and all that. But I just think I need to smile more.
Oh, I like it. So you just need to show off your smile more. I like you've been smiling a lot during our recording here, though. So I like that.
You're fun to talk with, Greg. So
oh, jeez, flattery gets you everywhere in my room. All right, question number 3: if you could go back and be the inventor of any dental product, which one would you choose and why?
Ooh, any dental product. Wow, I'm into stuff that is just, life-changing, game-changing for people, right? So depending on how far you want to go back, I mean, toothpaste, obviously has got to be at the top of that list with a good toothbrush.
Especially if they're eating the
right?
the snack you talked about.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, and then the extension of that, like the electric toothbrush, is probably had that, and the good toothpaste has probably had the people using them daily or twice a day. It's probably had the best impact on hygiene overall. And if you're doing that and you're doing the floss, a lot of this other stuff may not just be necessary, right? So I think it starts with the basic hygiene product. I think it'd have to go with an electric toothbrush or like a good toothpaste.
I like it. It.
Probably not all that exciting.
That's right. It doesn't have to be exciting. It's your answer. Well, Cory, I want to respect your time and my listening audience's time, whatever they're doing. I know they do lots of things while listening to the Tooth Sleuth podcast. In the last few minutes, is there anything I haven't asked you that you want to share with the listening audience? Maybe about how to get a hold of WEO Media, marketing if they're interested in services or learn a little bit more, or anything else you want to share?
Yeah. It's really easy to get a hold of us. You can go to our website, which is weomedia.com. It's spelled WEO, the word media.com. Yeah, reach out via email through there, set up a consultation where we can do a website analysis and review of your current marketing for you. Give us a call. We're always answering phones, always available.
Excellent. My guest today has been Cory Roletto with WEO Media, the co-founder. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Tooth Sleuth podcast, Cory. Great to see you again, my friend.
Yeah, great talking to you. Thank you so much for having me.